Good evening, everyone. Welcome, to another reading of 1001 Nights. My name is Saman Giraud and I'll be your host this evening. Yeah, I did this so many times, I feel like I'm in a rush saying it. Anyways, I hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful day. I'm just going to have a sip of tea before I start. Hold on, sorry. Good to go. All right, let's all get comfortable for tonight's reading. Now when it was the 166th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the slave girl went on telling the jeweler. I was dazed for joy to see her, after having lost all hopes of finding her alive. When I came up to her, she bade me give the man who had brought her thither 1,000 gold pieces. And we carried her in, I and the 2 maids, and laid her on her bed, where she passed that night in a sorely troubled state. And when morning dawned, I forbade the women and eunuchs to go in to her, or even to draw near her for the whole of that day. But on the next, she revived and somewhat recovered, and I found her as if she had come out of her grave. I sprinkled rose water on her face, and changed her clothes, and washed her hands and feet. Nor did I cease to coax her till I brought her to eat a little, and drink some wine, though she had no mind to any such matter. As soon as she had breathed the fresh air and strength began to return to her, I took to upbraiding her, saying, O my lady, consider and have pity on myself. Thou seest what hath betided us, surely enough and more than enough of evil hath befallen thee, for indeed thou hast been nigh upon death. She said, By Allah, good damsel, in sooth death were easier to me than what hath betided me, for it seemed as though I should be slain and no power could save me. When the robbers took us from the jeweller's house, they asked me, Who mayst thou be? And hearing my answer, I am a singing girl, they believed me. Then they turned to Ali bin Bakkar and made inquiries about him. And who art thou? And what is thy condition? Whereto he replied, I am of the common kind. So they took us and carried us along without our resisting to their abode, and we hurried on with them for excess of fear. But when they had us set down with them in the house, they looked hard at me, and seeing the clothes I wore and my necklaces and jewelry, believed not my account of myself, and said to me, Of a truth, these necklaces belong to no singing girl. So be soothfast and tell us the truth of thy case. I returned them no answer whatsoever, saying in my mind, Now will they slay me for the sake of my apparel and ornaments, and I spoke not a word. Then the villains turned to Ali bin Bakkar, asking, And thou? Who art thou? And whence art thou? For thy semblance seemeth not as that of the common kind. But he was silent, and the rogues, and ceased not to keep our counsel and to weep. Allah softened the rogues' hearts to pity, and they said to us, Who is the owner of the house wherein ye were? We answered, Such an one, the jeweller. Whereupon quoth one of them, I know him right well, and I wot the other house where he liveth, and I will engage to bring him to you this very hour. Then they agreed to set me in a place by myself, and Ali bin Bakkar in a place by himself, and said to us, Be at rest, ye twain, and fear not lest your secret be divulged. Ye are safe from us. Meanwhile, their comrade went away and returned with the jeweller, who made known to them our case, and we joined company with him. After which a man of the band fetched a bark, wherein they embarked us all three, and rowing us over the river, landed us with scant ceremony on the opposite bank, and went their ways. Thereupon came a horse patrol, and asked us who we were. So I spoke with the captain of the watch and said to him, I am Shams al-Nahar, the Caliph's favourite. I had drunken strong wine and went out to visit certain of my acquaintance of the wives of the viziers, when yonder rogues came upon me and laid hold of me and brought me to this place. But when they saw you, they fled as fast as they could. I met these men with them, so do thou escort me and them to a place of safety, and I will requite thee as I am well able to do. When the captain of the watch heard my speech, he knew me, and alighting, mounted me on his horse, and in like manner did two of his men with Ali bin Bakkar. So I spoke to her, continued the handmaid, and blamed her doings, and bade her beware, and said to her, O my lady, have some care for thy life. But she was angered at my words, and cried out at me. Accordingly I left her and came forth in quest of thee, but found thee not, and dared not to go to the house of Ali bin Bakkar. So stood watching for thee, that I might ask thee of him, and how it goes with him. And I pray thee of thy favour to take me of some money, for thou hast doubtless borrowed from thy friends part of the gear, and as it is lost, it behoveth thee to make it good with folk. I replied, to hear is to obey, go on. And I walked with her till we drew near my house, when she said to me, wait here till I come back to thee. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was the 167th night, she said, it hath reached me, O auspicious king, that after the slave girl had addressed the jeweller, wait here till I come back to thee, she went away, and presently returned with the money, which she put, continued the jeweller, into my hand, saying, O my master, in what place shall we meet? Quoth I will start and go to my house at once, and suffer hard things for thy sake, and contrive how thou mayst win access to him, for such access is difficult at this present. Said she, let me know some spot where I shall come to thee. And I answered, in my other house. I will go thither forthright, and have the doors mended, and the place made safe again, and henceforth we will meet there. Then she took leave of me, and went her way, whilst I carried the money home, and counting it, found it 5,000 dinars. So I gave my people some of it, and to all who had lent me aught I made good their loss. After which I arose and took my servants and repaired to my other house, whence the things had been stolen. And I brought builders and carpenters and masons, who restored it to its former state. Moreover, I placed my slave there, and forgot the mishaps which had befallen me. Then I fared forth and repaired to Ali bin Bakkar's house, and when I reached it, his slave servants accosted me, saying, Our Lord calleth for thee night and day, and hath promised to free whichever of us bringeth thee to him. For they have been wandering about in quest of thee everywhere, but knew not in what part to find thee. Our master is by way of recovering strength, but at times he reviveth, and at times he relapseth. And whenever he reviveth, he nameth thee, and saith, Needs must ye bring him to me, thought but for the twinkling of an eye. And then he sinketh back into his torpor, Accordingly, continued the jeweller, I accompanied the slave and went in to Ali bin Bakkar, and, finding him unable to speak, sat down at his head, whereupon he opened his eyes and, seeing me, wept and said, "Welcome and welcome." I raised him, and making him sit up, strained him to my bosom, and he said, "Know, O my brother, that from the hour I took to my bed, I have not sat up till now. Praise to Allah that I see thee again." And I ceased not to prop him and support him, until I made him stand on his feet and walk a few steps. After which I changed his clothes, and he drank some wine, but all this he did for my satisfaction. Then, seeing him somewhat restored, I told him what had befallen me with the slave girl, none else hearing me, and said to him, "Take heart and be of good courage. I know what thou sufferest." He smiled, and I added, "Verily, nothing shall betide thee, save what shall rejoice thee and medicine thee." Thereupon he called for food, which being brought, he signed to his pages, and they withdrew. Then quoth he to me, "O my brother, hast thou seen what hath befallen me?" And he made excuses to me, and asked how I had fared all that while. I told him everything that had befallen me, from beginning to end. Whereat he wondered, and calling his servant said, "Bring me such and such things." They brought in fine carpets and hangings, and besides that vessels of gold and silver, more than I had lost, and he gave them all to me. So I sent them to my house and abode with him that night. When the day began to yellow, he said to me, "Know thou that as to all things there is an end, so the end of love is either death or accomplishment of desire. I am nearer unto death, would I had died ere this befell. And had not Allah favoured us, we had been found out and put to shame. And now I know not what shall deliver me from this my strait. And were it not that I fear Allah, I would hasten my own death. For know, O my brother, that I am like bird in cage, and that my life is of a surety perished, choked by the distresses which have befallen me. Yet hath it a period stablished firm, and an appointed term." And he wept and groaned, and began repeating, "Enough of tears hath shed the lover white, when grief outcast all patience from his sprite. He hid the secrets which united us, but now his eye parts what he did unite." When he had finished his verses, the jeweller said to him, "O my lord, I now intend returning to my house." He answered, "There be no harm in that. Go and come back to me with news as fast as possible, for thou seest my case." So I took leave of him, continued the jeweller, and went home, and hardly had I sat down when up came the damsel, choked with long weeping. I asked, "What is the matter?" And she answered, "O my lord, know then that what we feared hath befallen us. For when I left thee yesterday, and returned to my lady, I found her in a fury with one of the two maids who were with us the other night, and she ordered her to be beaten. The girl was frightened and ran away. But as she was leaving the house, one of the door porters and guards of the gate met her and took her up, and would have sent her back to her mistress. However, she let fall some hints which were a disclosure to him. So he cajoled her and led her on to talk, and she tattled about our case, and let him know of all our doings. This affair came to the ears of the Caliph, who bade remove my mistress Shams al-Nahar and all her gear to the palace of the Caliphate, and set over her a guard of 20 eunuchs. Since then, to the present hour, he hath not visited her, nor hath given her to know the reason of his action. But I suspect this to be the cause, wherefore I am in fear for my life, and am sore troubled, O my lord, knowing not what I shall do, nor with what contrivance I shall order my affair and hers. For she hath none by her more trusted or more trustworthy than myself. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now when it was the 168th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the slave girl thus addressed the jeweller, and in very sooth my lady hath none by her more trusted or more trustworthy in matter of secrecy than myself. So go thou, O my master, and speed thee without delay to Ali bin Bakkar, and acquaint him with this, that he may be on his guard and ward. And if the affair be discovered, we will cast about for some means whereby to save our lives. On this, continued the jeweller, I was seized with sore trouble, and the world grew dark in my sight for the slave girl's words. And when she was about to wend, I said to her, What reckest thou, and what is to be done? Quoth she, My counsel is that thou hasten to Ali bin Bakkar, if thou be indeed his friend, and desire to save him. Thine be it to carry him his news, at once without aught of stay and delay, or regard for far and near. And mine be it to sniff about for further news. Then she took her leave of me and went away, so I rose and followed her track, and betaking myself to Ali bin Bakkar, found him flattering himself with impossible expectations. When he saw me returning to him so soon, he said, I see thou hast come back to me forthwith, and only too soon. I answered, Patience, and cut short this foolish connection, and shake off the preoccupation wherein thou art, for there hath befallen that which may bring about the loss of thy life and good. Now when he heard this, he was troubled and strongly moved, and he said to me, O my brother, tell me what hath happened. Replied I, O my lord, know that such and such things have happened, and thou art lost without recourse if thou abide in this thy house till the end of the day. At this he was confounded, and his soul well nigh departed his body. But he recovered himself and said to me, What shall I do, O my brother? And what counsel hast thou to offer? Answered I, My advice is that thou take what thou canst of thy property, and whom of thy slaves thou trustest, and flee with us to a land other than this, ere this very day come to an end. And he said, I hear and I obey. So he rose, confused and dazed, like one in epilepsy, now walking and now falling, and took what came under his hand. Then he made an excuse to his household and gave them his last injunctions, after which he loaded 3 camels and mounted his beast, and I did likewise. We went forward, privily in disguise, and fared on and ceased not our wayfare the rest of that day and all its night, till nigh upon morning, when we unloaded and, hobbling our camels, lay down to sleep. But we were worn with fatigue, and we neglected to keep watch, so that there fell upon us robbers, who stripped us excuse me, this is funny, who stripped us of all we had, and slew our slaves when these would have beaten them off, leaving us naked and in the sorriest of plights, after they had taken our money and lifted our beasts and disappeared. As soon as they were gone, we arose and walked on till morning dawned, where we came to a village which we entered, and finding a mosque, took refuge therein, for we were naked. So we sat in a corner all that day, and we passed the next night without meat or drink. And at daybreak we prayed our dawn prayer and sat down again. Presently, behold, a man entered and, saluting us, prayed a two-bow prayer, after which he turned to us and said, "O folk, are ye strangers?" We replied, "Yes. The bandits waylaid us and stripped us naked, and we came to this town, but know no one here with whom we may shelter." Quoth he, "What ye say? Will you come home with me?" "And," pursued the jeweller, "I said to Ali bin Bakkar, 'Up and let us go with him, and we shall escape two evils. The first, our fear lest someone who knoweth us enter this mosque and recognize us, so that we come to disgrace. And the second, that we are strangers and have no place wherein to lodge.' And he answered helplessly, 'As thou wilt.' Then the man said to us again, 'O ye poor folk, give ear unto me and come with me to my place.' And I replied, hearkening and obedience. Whereupon he pulled off a part of his own clothes and covered us therewith, and made his excuses to us and spoke kindly to us. Then we arose and accompanied him to his house, and he knocked at the door, whereupon a little slave boy came out and opened to us. The host entered, and we followed him, when he called for a bundle of clothes and muslins for turbans, and gave us each a suit and a piece. So we dressed and turbanded ourselves and sat down. Presently in came a damsel with a tray of food and set it before us, saying, 'Eat.' We ate some small matter, and she took away the tray, after which we abode with our host till nightfall, when Ali bin Bakkar sighed and said to me, 'Know, O my brother, that I am a dying man, past hope of life. And I would charge thee with a charge. It is that when thou seest me dead, thou go to my parent and tell her of my decease, and bid her come hither, that she may be here to receive the visits of condolence, and be present at the washing of my corpse. And do thou exhort her to bear my loss with patience.' Then he fell down in a fainting fit, and when he recovered he heard a damsel singing afar off, and making verses as she sang. Thereupon he addressed himself to give ear to her and hearken to her voice, and now he was insensible, absent from the world. And now he came to himself, and anon he wept for grief and mourning at the love which had befallen him. Presently he heard the damsel who was singing repeat these couplets: 'Parting ran up to part from lover twain, free converse, perfect concord, friendship fain. The nights with shifting drifted us apart. Would heaven I wot if we shall meet again. How bitter after meeting this to part. May lovers never endure so bitter pain. Death grip, death choke lasts for an hour and ends, but parting tortures aye in heart remain. Could we but trace where parting's house is placed, we would make parting eke of parting taste.' When Ali, son of Bakkar, heard the damsel's song, he sobbed one sob, and his soul quitted his body. As soon as I saw that he was dead, continued the jeweller, I committed his corpse to the care of the house master and said to him, Know thou that I am going to Baghdad to tell his mother and kinsfolk that they may come hither and conduct his burial. So I betook myself to Baghdad and, going to my house, changed my clothes, after which I repaired to Ali bin Bakar's lodging. Now when his servants saw me, they came to me and questioned me of him, and I bade them ask permission for me to go in to his mother. She gave me leave, so I entered, and saluting her said, Verily Allah ordereth the lives of all creatures by his commandment, and when he decreeth aught, there is no escaping its fulfilment, nor can any soul depart but by leave of Allah, according to the writ which affirmeth the appointed term. She guessed by these words that her son was dead, and wept with sore weeping. Then she said to me, Allah upon thee, tell me, is my son dead? I could not answer her for tears and excess of grief, and when she saw me thus, she was choked with weeping and fell to the ground in a fit. As soon as she came to herself, she said to me, Tell me how it was with my son. I replied, May Allah abundantly compensate thee for his loss. And I told her all that had befallen him from beginning to end. She then asked, Did he give thee any charge? And I answered, Yes, and told her what he had said, adding, Hasten to perform his funeral. When she heard these words, she swooned away again. And when she recovered, she addressed herself to do as I charged her. Then I returned to my house, and as I went along musing sadly upon the fair gifts of his youth, behold, a woman caught hold of my hand. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was, no, I'm joking. That was it for tonight. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the reading. We are off on the weekends, as you know, and if you don't, I just told you so. Oh, that was a beautiful rhyme. Good for me. I'll be seeing you on Wednesday. Joanna will be continuing on Tuesday. And stay tuned. We do have great news that we will share them with you at some other time. As usual, remember to go inwards instead of outwards. Sending you much love. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.